We'll be covering the Jedi Shadow Serenity build and the Sith Assassin Hatred on the Republic side and the Imperial side respectively. The main rotation for those that just want to get going with it, on the Serenity side it's Severed Force, Force Breach, Force Imbalance, Squelch, Serenity Strike, Spinning Strike, Double Strike, back to Force Imbalance, Squelch, Force Potency at this point, Double Strike, Double Strike, Double Strike, and then repeat your rotation. On the Sith Assassin Hatred side, it's Creeping Terror, Discharge, Death Field, Eradicate, Leeching Strike, Assassinate, Thrash, Death Field again, Eradicate again, and then Recklessness. Thrash 3 times, and then you repeat. Your ability tree is going to look as follows. For those that want to be quick about this, I will go through this in detail next. So on the Republic side, we need to cover a few things here now, a little bit more in detail. Some of the things that we need to know about is we have Severed Force and Force Breach as our two first dots. They play an important role, and you always want to put them on a target when you start switching to a new target. Let's just quickly look at Force Breach. If I use my Squelch, if I do any melee attacks, nothing helps. Nothing changes, but if I have a Force Breach on the target and I hit the target, it does reset Squelch. And this is because of Force Strike. Every 9 seconds, Force Strike, it will reset Squelch with any melee attack that has Force Breach on it. So this adds up to being about 5 abilities. Let's just check. We reset it once, use it again. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can reuse it again. We're going to use this concept. It's important to note, because if you're waiting for this ability to reset and it doesn't reset, it's most likely because you don't have Force Breach on the target. Next thing is to see if we use Double Strike, we do get this little orange damage once in a while. And this damage comes from ability that's one of our passives. Force Technique has a 50% chance to deal some damage. This does add up, so we want to make sure that this plays a role in it. But in addition to this, it's going to play a bigger role in it once we get later down the line. But if we look at Severed Force, if we now use our melee attack, we see additional damage coming along. Our Double Strike, because of our tactical, 2 times trouble, has an additional chance to tick in dots for us. It's about 60%. So we want to employ our 2 times trouble tactical with this dot as well. It's going to play a bigger role as we do our melee attacks. Let's go back into our loadout and see the implants that we're going to use as Force Training Package. Melee and Force attacks deal 3% more damage. And Dynamic Force Package, which is the cooldown of Force Potency is reduced by 15 seconds. Accuracy, we want to get our accuracy as close as we can to 10%. I'm at 9 with those stats, but I got the bonus boost from my legacy. If you want to know what that is, in your legacy under Republic, you'll find that if you've worked through talking to your companions on your ship, you'll get this bonus for grants bonus to your accuracy, which is 1%. Then that gets you to 10%. This is going to be really important. We're going to be using a lot of weapon attacks to tick dots and to reset our Force Potency. Let's look at our Force Potency a little bit. If we look at our Force Potency ability here, it has a last for 20 seconds. Critically hitting with a periodic damage effect reduces the cooldown of Force Potency by 2 seconds. if we activate our force potency, we see we get 2 charges. None of our dots will tick this. None of our weapon attacks will do this. Never use up the dots. But force imbalance and squelch will use this. This is going to be really, really handy and where we can use our force potency. Let's look at something else about force potency. When we activate it, it has a really long cooldown of about a minute. But when we start ticking some dots, we can see that it starts losing time. And we can really accelerate this. If you can see, the time is coming down. We are going to set this up so that just about every 13 seconds or thereabout, we are going to be resetting force potency. And the way that this works is that when we put a dot on our target and that dot ticks critically, it resets force potency or reduces it. So let's look at here. We start our rotation. Look at the cooldown on force potency. And let's reset. So we should go over our ability tree next so that we can discuss what happens next. So force and balance. We're going to take the balancing field in line 23. Force and balance gains an additional ability charge. This is really important for, it almost works like a buffer system, and we'll get to that. Force wave is a nice feature here. There's some other benefits here, but it's really nice to have a push on this character. Ensure, dealing damage with squelch, applies ensure to the target, increasing the critical hit chance of your periodic effects by 20%, lasts for 10 seconds. This is really important. We're going to see that the critical chance to crit on our periodic effects is the key to this build. Line 43, we're going to go longing force. The critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and life stolen of your periodic damage effects is increased by 10%. Whenever you yield by Serenity Discipline effect, you gain 2 force. A lot of people are saying going with Hallowing. Killing an enemy or activating force potency resets the cooldown of all melee attacks and squelch and increases your damage by 10% for 20 seconds. There is a bit of a problem here at this stage in the build at 7.11. Hallowing is not quite performing as well as Longing Force, and it comes down to our critical rating. At this point at 2800, we are not going to reset our force potency fast enough if we take Hallowing. There is Longing Force gives us an additional benefit of generating some extra force for us, which does become a problem. Hallowing can solve this problem by switching to something like Saber Strike, but that gives us a drop in DPS because we're not using double strike. That shouldn't be a problem if we had enough critical, because we can recycle our other abilities much faster. So at this point, our critical hit rating is just not enough to make Hallowing sustainable, and that's why Longing Force seems to be performing a little bit better. 51, Intangible Spirit. That's a nice resistance there for AoE damage. 64, Force Phase. Force Speed and Shadow Strike grants Force Phase, removing all movement and parrying effects, granting immunity to them for 2 seconds. That is nice. You can really be flexible in this line. Your Force Speed is not critical to your rotation. The question is just what other benefits are you going to be getting from the other abilities. 68, Resilience. very nice to have resilience. The reason why is we don't have a lot of defensive abilities, so to have one that is this powerful is really important. Line 73, a Stalker Swiftness. This is great. It's not essential to our build. It's nice to have, but there's really no other better option in this line, except if you find a unique scenario where this could be a benefit to you. Okay, so the rotation goes Severed Force, Force Breach, Force and Balance, Squelch, Serenity Strike, and then if you find that Spinning Strike isn't activated yet, it's in its rotation, just go to Double Strike and come back to Spinning Strike. So let's just start that again. I'm going to show you Force Breach, Force and Balance, Squelch, Serenity Strike, Spinning Strike, Double Strike, Force and Balance, Squelch, Force Potency, 3 double strikes, 1, 2, 3, and we restart. 1. Spinning Strike, Double Strike, Force and Balance, Squelch, Force Potency, 3 double strikes, 1, 2, 3, restart. Force and Balance, Squelch, Serenity Strike, Spinning Strike, Double Strike, Force and Balance, Squelch, 1, 2, 3. If you watch, here comes our stacks. So in the beginning of our rotations, we have our 2 stacks that are activating in the beginning of our next rotation. The other thing that you should take a note of, let's just slow this rotation down. I want you to see what's happening here with this reset cycle on Force and Balance. We're about to gain 2 stacks, and the reason why we're slowing down or delaying our Force Potency in the rotation has to do with this mechanics that's going on here. So if we go with Severed Force, Force Breach, Force and Balance, it's starting to rebuild the second stack. And just before it activates that one, we activate Force Potency, which gives us a stack and resets the stack. So in one rotation around the Force and Balance, which is, if you look at that, its cooldown is 12.7 seconds. We are finishing a rotation in that. We tick Force Potency, which gives us another stack of Force and Balance. So every 12.7 seconds, we're resetting Force and Potency, giving us an extra stack. We gain an extra stack from the cooldown, and we're back to set to having 2 stacks. If we use Force Potency earlier on, we're burning it at a point where these stacks are already at max. And if we burn it right after we used it to get the benefit on Serenity Strike, Spinning Strike, and Double Strike, we are not getting as many critical ticks from weapons to tick the Force Potency down. So by delaying it a little bit in our rotation and putting it in front of the 3 double strikes, we are getting a full rotation start from Severed Force, Force Breach right after we've done our 3 double strikes, and then we get the timing right for the 2 stacks on Force, Balance and Squelch, giving us a scenario where we are ticking as many times as we can in the rotation to bring Force Potency down. And you can experiment with this. You can move Force Potency different times in the rotation, and you will find that it doesn't always reset reliably, and the only time that it really does so is right in front of that 3 double strikes further down in the rotation. So let's look at it again. Severed Force, Force Breach, Force and Balance, Squelch, Serenity Strike, Spinning Strike, Double Strike, Force and Balance, Squelch, now Force Potency, 3 double strikes, 1, 2, 3, reset our rotation. Force and Balance. And look at Force Potency coming down, and we have it available again. 1, 2, 3, and we gain our 2 stacks back in here. So let's have a look at this and look at the actual DPS that we can achieve. So in this scenario, I'm not going to be clicking. I'm going to be going through this fairly fast. I'm also going to debuff the dummy. This is going to simulate the best scenario in an operation. So just waiting for force and balance. Eradicate. Force and balance. Squelch. 1, 2, 3 double strikes. Reset our rotation. You can see we're at 27,000. One, 2, 3 double strikes. Reset our rotation. We're getting into a scenario where we're losing some force, and what I'm going to explain next is if we start seeing that we start losing some force, we have a saber strike. I'm going to simulate a scenario where we lose a lot of force. And so I'm just spamming double strike to get as low as we can with no other benefits. And if we see what saber strike doesn't use force, but you can see how quickly we can regain force using a saber strike. So saber strike is a great potential getting force filler ability back, and a great time to use that would be after the Serenity strike and spinning strike. Instead of going to a double strike, is going to a saber strike. That's after the point where we've used the most force, so a little breather in that gap can get us back to normal. So let's have a look here again. I'm going to debuff the dummy. As you can see, our force is doing fine. 1, 2, 3 double strikes, reset our rotation. One, 2, 3 double strikes, and we're at 27,000 on our DPS right now. One, 2, 3. One, 2, 3 on our double strike. Double strike. You can see we're doing about 27.5 now. So this build doesn't have a great opening spike, and as you see, we're slowly building our DPS numbers up. We're creeping up. We're now at the end of our rotation, and you see there I did 2 double strikes instead of doing The spinning strike, it wasn't procced, so that's fine. One, two, three double strikes, reset our rotation. At the end of that rotation we were just sub 28 DPS. So this is a class that on a longer fight really seems to do a lot better if you can stay on one target. If you have to switch targets, we'll cover that in a second. Okay, and we're now consistently getting above 28. So we're edging up slowly on this build instead of actually being a spike build. So we're really performing true to a dot spec build. Okay, so 28.1. I'll stop it there. I want to look at a little bit of the layout here and look at some of the critical features that we're looking at. Look at the critical chance here, and if I were to sort by critical, you'll see that our dots are all built to be speccing up at 80 plus crit chance, and that is really important. That's how we are resetting that force potency, is getting these dots to tick at the critical hits. So that's really key to this build. If we look a little bit here where we were actually performing, so we were holding a solid 28,000. If you get lucky, I've been up at 29,000 for a while. It really depends on the critical hit chance here. It is very flexible in the range in which it can perform. Sometimes you are down at 27 and you can't creep up. It really is a little bit of a luck situation there. Something else to think about is if you can get more into critical, it is probably going to perform really well until you get to about 3,100. So if you can squeeze it out, but do not sacrifice accuracy. And the reason why is because we have weapon attacks, and weapon attacks will quickly start impeding some of these ticks to be triggered. So be very, very careful. If we look at these double strike, Serenity strike, spinning strike, these are weapon attacks, and they are key to the mechanics that we are using. So I didn't miss it all, but if we were to start missing that, it's really going to impact our performance. The next thing is that this build is not going to do well with critical hit values that's much lower. I wouldn't suggest this build to anybody that doesn't have augments in already, because the lower your critical hit value is, critical rating is, you are going to struggle to reset that force potency in time. Next, let's look a little bit at what's going to happen is if you have soft targets. Force balance with the balancing field will, if you kill an enemy, will give you another charge back. So we are free to use force and balance on targets that are soft targets. Sever force, force breach, they don't have a cooldown on them. So if we're facing soft targets and we're gonna have to switch a lot, let's just see what the mechanics here is. If we use sever force, force breach, force, see, double strike, and we're just gonna spam double strike, and you can see we can get up to almost 20,000, and then we reset our ones as soon as we get force breach back, and we're just gonna double strike, and we're up at 20,000. And as we're about to get a force balance back, we go back to double strike. So on soft targets, I wouldn't bother too much about going the rest of the rotation. It's fine to mix them in, but you're doing 20,000 DPS by just using Sever Force, Force Breach, Force and Balance, and then your double strike. Force and Balance is also an AoE hit. So if you're dealing with really soft targets, it's about getting these three abilities off, using your double strike, resetting these three abilities when you see you're about to regain another stack of Force and Balance, and that will give you a really good soft target configuration. You're very quickly up on the DPS, and as you're about to get the stack back, you go back to your rotation. And if you're running low on force, throw in a saber strike and back to double strike. And you can see we're holding 21,000 DPS. So on soft targets, I wouldn't even worry too much about Squelch, Serenity Strike, Spinning Strike. The only time I would change that is that if there is some target that is a little bit harder, I would maybe go deeper into the rotation, and I would be very sparingly use my force potency. Keep in mind that your force potency requires you to be ticking dots. So if you're going to be taking out soft targets and you burn the force potency, you're not going to have it available again until the full cooldown happens, and that could be a little bit of a frustrating situation. You don't have the reset that you have in the other class, whereas you come out of combat, you regain your force potency. When you burn your force potency, if we were to come out of combat, you can see it's ticking down. But if I come out of combat, I don't regain that cooldown that I get in the infiltration class. So on soft targets, I almost rarely use force potency. I use it only in a situation where I need to take on a little bit of a tougher target in a group, and I know I'm not having a tougher fight ahead of me for a while. It doesn't take too much, but if I can have at least a few dots sticking for a while on some targets, I definitely will get my force potency back. Let's look at the Imperial side and look at the abilities and just familiarize ourselves with those names. Here on the Imperial side, the matching abilities is Creeping Terror, Discharge, Death Field, Eradicate, Leeching Strike, Assassinate, Thrash. Our filler ability, if we need to get force, is going to be Saber Strike, and then of course Recklessness is our force potency. So just to cover the rotation, it's Creeping Terror, Discharge, Death Field, Eradicate, Leeching Strike, Assassinate, Thrash, Death Field, Eradicate, Recklessness, Thrash 1, 2, 3, Reset. Eradicate, Leeching Strike, Assassinate, Thrash, Death Field, Recklessness, Thrash, 1, 2, 3. Something just to point out, we have a nice heal. We can sustain at least 2500 to 2900. It's a nice top up. We can't be doing what the Sorcerer Madness can do, but we are really nicely situated. One little thing to point out is we do not have like crazy defensives, so be very careful to use your deflection and force shroud, which is recklessness, on the other side. And then keep in mind that your force cloak is really important. If you are going to get a lot of aggro, use your force cloak to dump some aggro. It's also going to work as a cleanse, so you can really benefit from that mechanics. Let's see what we can do is if we put some speed to this. Okay. Death Field, Eradicate, Leeching Strike, Assassinate, Thrash, Death Field, Eradicate, Reckless. 1, 2, 3 Thrash, Reset. You can see we're up at 26.5. Thrash, Death Field, Eradicate, Reckless 1 Thrash, 2 Thrash, 3 Thrash. We're up at 28 at the end of that rotation. Thrash, Death Field, Eradicate, Reckless 1, 2 Thrash, 3 Thrash. We're up at 29, or just some 29 this time. Thrash, Death Field, Eradicate, Reckless 1 Thrash, 2 Thrash, 3 Thrash. We've just edged out 28,000 that last rotation. Reckless is but for 1, 2 Thrash, 3 Thrash. Back to our rotation. And there I didn't have an assassinate trigger, and that's fine. I'm just going to skip it on the rotation and mix in some thrashes. In my opinion, the biggest flaw that this build has is that it is very reliant on the critical chances that you have during your rotation. Even though we have all of these boosts to get our critical chance on the dots up to 80%, a little variance of a few percentage seems to make a big impact in the DPS output, and can potentially affect our force potency or recklessness being reset reliably. That's something you need to keep in mind, that if you don't have enough critical chance rating, you're going to struggle with this rotation and you're going to struggle with this build. Okay, we'll leave it there. We could definitely reach 28,000. As I've said before, I've been able to get up to 28.5, 28.9. It is a little bit about pushing your rotation really tight, making sure that you don't get your actions per minute up as much as you can. The other benefit that you'll get is just random chance. The more you crit, the better you'll do. If we look at crit rating here, Lightning Charge was getting a 92.4% crit chance. So a little bit of extra crit will really creep these values up. Keep in mind these are stacked from our ability tree, so if we can get our base crit chance up, that will really make a difference. Here I did another Parsh. I'm up at 29.8. If we look at the whole combat, you can see the Creeping Terror. All of these numbers look a little bit higher. My actions per minute is a little bit faster. If you go back a little bit, let's go to up here. I was holding it even more. But there were certain rotations where my recklessness or force potency wasn't resetting exactly. I was holding up at above 30,000, and then when I got to the 3 thrashes, I only could get my recklessness back on the after the first one, and those were the rotations where I just didn't crit that much, and so my DPS dropped a little bit. So it definitely varies quite a bit. Very achievable to get to 29. It's all about being very, very tight on your actions per minute. If you drop this by even 1 point, it's really going to dramatically affect your DPS. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.